Imagine all your audio entertainment available in just one place. That's what the Audible app is all about. With Audible, you can always find the best of what you love or discover something new. Audible has an incredible selection of wellness titles and originals, like The Light Podcast by Michelle Obama, Work It Out by Mel Robbins, and Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. Membership includes access to Audible originals, podcasts, and tons of audiobooks that you can download or stream as much as you want. And as an Audible member, you can choose one title per month from an ever-growing catalog of titles to keep. The Audible app makes it easy to listen anytime, anywhere, whether you're traveling, working out, doing chores, wherever your day takes you. New members can try Audible now free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/motivation or text motivation to 500-500. That's audible.com/motivation or text motivation to 500-500 to try Audible free for 30 days.
The weather is cooling down a bit. The leaves are starting to fall. Yes, it's that time of year again. Football season. And we all know the best part of any game day traditions are the ones that involve food. There's nothing like having everyone in your game day crew coming together to bring their best bites and argue over whose family makes the best chili. And while there's no need to mess with the perfection of game day classics, like a freshly grilled Oscar Mayer hot dog topped with Heinz ketchup and mustard, it's always fun to step out of your comfort zone and get creative with your recipes. Because there's nothing more fun than adding to your list of game day traditions, like making a creamy and delectable queso dip with Velveeta cheese that can be eaten with so much more than just chips. Now is the chance for people across the nation to find out whose game day eats reign supreme. It's your turn to show off your tasty game day food traditions. Go to www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to share a photo of your game day food tradition to enter to win $10,000. Once again, that's www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to enter to win $10,000.
This is Full Change with Tom Laidlaw.
Tom, we got another great guest today and another former teammate.
Jeez, I played with a lot of guys.
You did play a lot of guys. This one came to the Rangers and stood on his head for the team. It's goaltender Eddie Mio.
Eddie Mio, what's happening, brother? How are you doing?
I'm good, Tom. How are you doing, bud?
Good. Kind of reminds me of the old days at Madison Square Garden where Eddie get knocked down and the crowd would go, Eddie, Eddie, Eddie. He'd get up and the crowd would go nuts.
A lot of that was staged, Tom. You know that. Me and Weeksy staged those things.
Yeah, sure. I don't blame you a bit. Great to see you again, man. I haven't seen you in a long time. Yeah. I guess we'll cover all this stuff, but Eddie and I worked together with IMG for several years too, so we'll get on all that. So where are you living now?
Yeah. I'm still West Bloomfield, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Where I was when we were working, yeah. So I think you were just down the road when were you in Royal Oak?
I was in Bloomfield.
Birmingham.
By Birmingham, yeah. That was
a
great area. I love living there. Yeah, that was a great area.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize what a great part of the country that is. It's really beautiful stuff there. But you're from Windsor originally, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yep. Right across the border. I figured I'd stay here and take advantage of my green card, and it's far enough that I don't have friends just stopping by, and close enough that I can get to the border in 25 minutes.
There you go. You're thinking, man. Yeah. So you grew up in Windsor there. Were you a goalie when you first started playing?
Oh yeah. Oh. I was. My family, both mom and dad came over from the boat and worked hard. We didn't have a lot of cash. And I just wanted to play hockey. So back then we had the outdoor rinks. In fact, this was Lansbury Park. And the only equipment that I had was what they could supply in the Parks and Recreation. And it was goalie stuff. Oh. And also I was a very bad skater, as you remember in the 80s, Tom.
Well,
and so back then, back then they put all the bad skaters in goal as long as you had some reflexes. Yeah. So that's how I started and never swayed. I just as you remember growing up, hockey night in Canada, Saturday night, put yourself in front of the TV, 8:00. And back then it was Johnny Bauer and Terry Sawchuk and Glenn Hall. And it just seemed like they played the whole time. Yeah. And they made spectacular saves, and they seemed to be the hero all the time until I finally got into it. We were the GOAT a lot more times in my career.
Yeah, well, that is part of the job, though, right? I mean, you can be the hero one time, and then the next time you're the GOAT because things don't go well. My son was a goaltender too, my oldest son, and I had to coach him, and that was the hard part. When he didn't have a good game, I had to yank him out of there. That was, but what, they're young like that. I don't know how you were when you played when you were a kid, but it never really seemed to bother him. I was more worried about it than him, and then he just wanted to go for donuts after. So were you pretty good right away, Eddie?
You know what? I had good reflexes. Growing up, for some reason, you played on the street back then. You played road hockey, and again, I was always in the goal, and you played with a ball, and they came pretty quick, and my glove hand, I think, was pretty good, and I had quick feet, but at the time, it was just, I think I was just learning the game and just having fun. It wasn't until my first year in high school, I went to Assumption High School, which was a private Catholic school, but always had good athletics, football team, basketball team. And they had a small outdoor rink, which was worked on by, we had about 200 boarders, right, from Michigan, and it was a boarding school. And they would be out there working the merits off, and so we had ice most of the time. And back then, if you remember, well, you would, because you were in Toronto, right? So it got cold in November and snowy back then. Yep. So we had ice every day compared to some kids playing, organized hockey could only get on the ice once a week, maybe twice a week. Yep. So we were on there and literally a man by the name of Father Cullen, who's passed away now. He was a Brazilian father and just taught me how to play goal. In fact, in September, we were out in the tennis court, and he had guys shooting pucks from a plywood, and I was in tennis shoes, pads, full equipment, stopping pucks in September. Wow. So it was just back in freshman, I can remember I started to take off and started realizing, hey, maybe this will work,
Yeah, very cool.
So, Eddie, you were a pretty good baseball player too, right?
Yes. There's some people that thought I should have went baseball instead of hockey.
Really? I didn't know that, Eddie. Wow, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah. I went to a camp in London, Ontario for all the Canadians they had been watching. And it was mainly a pitchers and a catchers, and I was the catcher. And afterwards, and I'm pretty sure it was Murtaugh was the coach back then, the head coach. And their whole staff was down for the Pirates. And they had a little catcher by the name of Sanguian. Oh, yeah. And I was only 5'10", 10.5. So it didn't seem – nowadays they want catchers to be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". Right. But they wanted me to come to their AAA camp down in the south. And I said, well, when is it? And he goes, right around September 7th, 8th, 9th, right after Labor Day. I said, oh, geez, I can't. And they said, well, why can't you? I says, well, I got to go to college. They kind of perked up thinking I was going to college to play ball. He says, oh, you got a scholarship? And I says, yeah, in hockey. That's the last I heard of him.
Oh, where did you go to college again?
I went to Colorado College.
That's right, yes. Did you stay the 4 years there, the full 4 years?
Yeah, after the second year, I was drafted by Chicago and Vancouver in the WHA. And they asked me to come to camp. And back then, you could come to camp, for a week. They didn't care. It wasn't no NCAA like we had to go through in the 90s and even now. But I went to the Dallas camp. And Bobby Crum was the head coach. And anyways, they wanted to play me. They wanted to play me in an exhibition game. And they said, we got to sign you, though, before you do that. And they said, we can give you $10,000 from Chicago and then put you in Flint and you get paid there. Well, the way I looked at it, back then, they had Tony Esposito, Mike Visor, and Michel Dumas. There's no way in hell I was going to break that lineup and get to the top quicker. So I decided to go back 2 more, at least the first year. My junior year turned into a really good year. We had a good team. I was All-American, all WCHA. So I decided to stay the senior year. I hadn't an agent back then. Right. If you remember, I think you were the same thing. We didn't get agents till actually after our senior year, So So it was a good move for me, and I stayed the 4 years, and I graduated, Tom.
Oh, you did? Wow.
I graduated late. Yeah. I haven't used that degree yet.
What was your major?
Business.
Oh, cool.
Business.
That's good. That's a big deal, really. See, I'm proud of you for that, because I'm saying the opposite, right? I got so carried away with my hockey, I just never went back and got it, and I wish I had it. So, yeah. Definitely good job.
Yeah, you left after junior, right?
I left after my senior year. I left so as soon as we got done, we went to the finals my senior year, and then I left right away and signed with the Rangers. So, I mean, listen, I still could have got it back and finished it. There's no excuses. I was just a meathead hockey player. Yeah. So okay. So you leave Colorado College, and then what happens next?
Yeah. Well, in the summer, you don't know who's going to offer nothing. Chicago made an offer, but in the meantime, Vancouver had folded, and they became the Calgary Cowboys. Oh. And there, Warren Strelo convinced Roger Crozier to. No, was it Rod? That's the goaltender. Joe Crozier. That's right.
Joe Crozier.
And and convinced them to take a look at me, and they signed me. So I went to the WHA. Again, Chicago had Tony Esposito still, and there's no way you're getting through there. And so I played in Calgary, and I was up and down, mainly down, because they had a guy, Gary Bromley, had just come over from Buffalo, and the clubfoot guy, Smokey McLeod, was the regular guy, and he had just won the Avco Cup in Houston the year before. So guess what? I'm back in the minors. Well, and it was a good place for me. In the Southern League, started, and they folded, and then I went to that proverbial North American League where that movie Slapshot came out of.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
I didn't know that. Wow. Cool. Yeah. And trust me, that Slapshot is true.
Yeah.
I spent 4 months.
Right. 4 months. Eddie, at this point when all this is going on, did you think you could play in the National Hockey League?
I thought I had a chance, Tommy. and it was, again, you're in the WHA, but there was always talk that certain teams were going to survive the WHA and get into the NHL, right? And it's funny, like you say, it's funny how things work out and what avenues you take to get where you finally end up.
Sure.
And by me staying in the WHA, again, Calgary folds that year. I go to Birmingham. Birmingham puts me on loan to Indianapolis.
Okay.
And then Indianapolis, I get the great fortune of the kid coming up at 17, right?
Gretzky
kid. What's that kid?
Gretzky kid. Right?
The kid. And so you see how things, then it ends up him, and Peter Driscoll get sold to Edmonton, who was the steadiest franchise of them in Winnipeg. And then we get the WHA folds, and Edmonton's one of the teams in the NHL. So that was my route. And like you said, there is a point where, and I think you've went through it too, where you thought you could play. And now it's just getting that opportunity. And as you know, when we were dealing with kids in the 90s, we always tried to give them that impression. Never give up.
Yeah.
It might not go the way you want. Yeah. So it worked out for me. It worked out.
How was that plane ride? Because that's pretty epic that you guys had no idea where you're going and you couldn't pay for the flight, right?
Well, we were at the practice, and we finished the practice, and Pat Stapleton comes in, and he was our coach and GM at the time, and says, in the dressing room, he says, "Hey guys, I want to see you in the office, blah, blah, blah. Go home, grab as much stuff as you can, take your equipment. You guys are gone." "Well, where are we going, coach?" "We don't know yet. Just be at the airport at 2:00. Equipment, here's some sticks, and whatever clothes you can put."
Well, hold on. So were they trying to keep it a secret, or they just didn't know, or what was going on? I didn't.
No, there was a bidding war between Edmonton and Winnipeg.
Oh, okay.
And no one was sure. And I think if you ever get Gretz on there, he'll tell you that everybody thinks it was a backgammon game, but it wasn't. It was just, and Bobby Hull tells this story to Wayne, that I think it was Rudy Pillis was the GM, and he went to Bugatti, or got the owner of the Jets at the time, said, "Hey, listen, what do you think about this kid. We got a chance to get him, right? And Bobby says, grab him. Okay. I played with him. You got to grab him. He's got potential. And Rudy Pillis is going, he's 17 years old. He's skinny. Who knows what he's going to be? And besides, they want to give the goalie and Peter Driscoll, who at the time, the year before, scored 50 and was a tough guy, right? He could fight. Yeah. So we don't need a goalie, they said. And so I don't know. And Bobby, to this day, will tell you, he fought like hell to get Wayne to Winnipeg, right? So Edmonton comes in, and they're willing to take all three. But Winnipeg, it was just a battle. So they said by 2 o'clock, who's ever got $250,000 in the bank, that's where you're going. So that's why Whitey said, be at the airport at 2 o'clock, then we'll know where you're going. Okay. Wow. Well, we get to the airport, and there's this little Lear jet. I don't even know how we're going to fit the stuff we brought because there's no undercarriage or nothing, right? So we load everything up, and still we're not going there. We're sitting on the tarmac. Okay. It wasn't a cold day in November. It was night. Indianapolis gets pretty good weather.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Cut to the chase. About an hour later, the decision is get on the jet and make a flight plan to Minneapolis. Okay. Oh. By the time you get to Minneapolis, we'll know. So sure enough, we get in, we all our stuff, we got equipment. Gretz is sitting on the cooler that had our beer and sandwiches. Me and Drisk are in the back. So we take off, and we're just still climbing. We're not even at the altitude for cruising. And the pilot door opens up and literally looks back and says, all right, who's paying for this? And we're all looking around going, what do you mean who's paying for this? Obviously, wherever we're going. The pilot says, well, we don't know where we're going. We're going to Minneapolis, and they'll tell us. Well, then you'll get – no. I said, well, what happens? He says, we're going to have to turn around and go back. So
I didn't hear this. Right?
I'm being the oldest, right? So I make a corporate decision and says, all right, do you take credit cards? And the pilot says, yeah. And he brings out the old swiper, So I give him the card. And it's a Toronto Dominion, okay? And gives it back. I sign it. He gets his copy, gives me my copy and my card back. And I'm just staring at the damn thing, right? And Peter Driscoll's sitting next to me. We're having a beer. And he goes, what's the matter? He says, I show him the total. And I can't remember, but I think it was like up to $7,000, $8,000. Okay. Really? Now, first of all, remember, I'm only making $35,000. Sure. Okay. This is 1978. Yeah. So long story short, he says, well, again, don't worry about it. Wherever we go, we'll pay for it. I says, yeah, but do you think they'll check my credit card? And he says, well, why? I said, it's got a $500 Canadian limit on it.
I was just wondering about that. Yeah, and they didn't no way of checking it back then, all right? They couldn't check it back then.
I was hoping because they would have turned back because the card would have been denied, right? So there was no way they could file it because it was in the old days. It's not like those machines they got now, right?
Yeah, sure.
It was just a verbal copy and a signature. So we get to Minneapolis, and again, okay, guys, flight plan, Edmonton. Boom. Well, we finally land in Edmonton. We're late, and the PR guy, I think was John Short at the time, comes in. He meets the plane. He says, guys, got to hurry up. The press has been waiting for 3-4 hours. Got to get on. I says, not until you take care of this. And I gave him my copy. He says, yeah, go. And they ripped up my copy, which was the worst thing now that I think about it, because seeing what Wayne became in Edmonton, my copy was the flight. I would have mounted it and given it to him, right?
Oh, because that's Hockey Hall of Fame. That's how we got.
And that's the way we got there.
That's a fantastic story. I didn't realize that. That's an extra story. Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember Wayne told it on Johnny Carson.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that. I've never
Wayne
heard
told
that
the whole story. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you get to Edmonton now. Who else was in Edmonton? What other goaltenders?
Dave Dryden.
Oh, okay.
And he had just come from the NHL. And the backup was a guy, I can't remember his name, but it was they needed another goaltender. Actually, they were looking for me to be number one because Dave was getting older in age, and so it was me and Dave, and we got along great, except on the road we were roommates, and Dave didn't drink.
Oh no!
Lights were out at 10 o'clock, and you know me, Tommy.
He's the one guy.
You know me.
The one guy in the league that doesn't drink at that time, man. Okay, so Eddie, this was going.
Dave Langevin. Dave Langevin on our team didn't, right? So I went to Glenn Sather, and I says, Glenn, I can't room with Dave. He's a great guy, but the nights that he's playing, I go out to dinner with the boys, and I'm afraid to come in because he's lights out at 10, and I like the TV, but So he says, "Okay, I got that settled. We'll put Dave and Dave, Langevin and Dryden, and guess who my roommate was?
Wayne?
Semenko.
Oh, is that right? Oh, you guys bailed all the time. No sleep. Oh man, he's a great guy too, wasn't he?
Oh, he was excellent. He was excellent.
So
I don't think he ever made a curfew.
Is this going into the 80-81 season then, the first year? Or is this going back?
Well, 78, 79 was our last WHA year, the year we were sold. And we ended up going to the Avco Cup finals. And guess who we lose to? The Winnipeg Jets.
Is that right?
Yeah, we lost to the Jets. And then that summer, the league folded, and the NHL picked up the 4 teams: Quebec City, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Hartford. So,
did they protect you in that draft, that combination draft?
Yeah, they protected myself, Wayne, and Brent Gustafson. He went to Washington. Brent Eki Gustafson. In 79, he played great for us in the WHA with but for some reason the NHL said and Glenn Sather wasn't aware of it, couldn't protect him because he was already drafted. So you couldn't protect. Wayne wasn't drafted. I was drafted, but my rights were sold. Traded to Minnesota, and for some reason, goaltenders you could protect, but for some reason, which was confusing to us, and we also lost Dave Langevin. So we lost 2 real good players that Slats figured he could protect. So
wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So this time now, do you become the number 1 goaltender?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And things were going well until they weren't, and we ended up bringing in Ron Lowe, at the trade deadline, I think in February. And Ronnie came in, played very, very well for us. We ended up making the playoffs first year, and we lost to Philly in 3. But that was when Philly had that real good team. Remember, they went on a long winning streak. Yep. They were ready supposedly to get the cup. We took them to 3 hard games. 2 of them were in double overtime, and they ended up winning. So they beat us best out of 5, 3 straight. But we gave them a good goal to where there were signs in the Philly in the Spectrum, and you know how tough it was to play there.
Yeah.
Who are these guys thinking they were going to just knock us right out, right? First 2 games went right into double overtime, and they were a little worried. So, and we were on the road.
It's funny. It's funny thinking back about these days, and I know you saw it closer than I did. As great a player Wayne ultimately became, there's a lot of people at early in his career were kind of like, is he too small? He's not a good skater, doesn't have a good enough shot. Remember that, all the debate, he's really not that good. Yeah. That's interesting looking back now, right after the career.
That first year, he just showed everybody that, in 78 when we got to Edmonton, he struggled a little bit, right? He was learning. It's a new team. Right. And it wasn't until a game in Cincinnati after Christmas that he was kind of benched the first 2 periods. Oh. And we had just come from Indianapolis, and it was we lost the game. It was all 3 of our homecoming. We didn't play very well. Right. And so they benched, but then we were losing 3-1, and finally Sather says, "Okay, kid, show me what you got." He goes out and scores 3, and he never looked back at, and we won the game. And then that's when he took off. And then his first year, as you remember, the only reason he didn't get the scoring title was because him and Dion were tied, but Dion had 1 more goal than he did.
That's right, too. There's 1 goal. That's right. I forgot that.
Was he salty about that, Eddie?
What's that?
Was he salty about that he didn't get the title?
Well, yeah, you guys know Wayne pretty good. Perfection he's very proud man. But you know what? He took it in stride. Didn't care I think he was more. I think he was more pissed because he wasn't eligible for the Rookie of the Year.
Oh, he wasn't eligible. Why not?
Because he played the year before WHA.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So he just went out and won 9 more in a row, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't worry about that. And then our 80-81 season, I played really well. I was the number one goaltender. Ron Lowe got hurt, so it was me and Gary Edwards took on most of the load. We got into the playoffs with 6 games left. I had just played about 26 in a row. And again, Tom, this is how we go and how things happen, right?
Yeah, sure.
6 games left. We're struggling to make the playoffs. We're in the playoffs now after I just played. Pre-game skate, I break my knuckle, my hand, okay? And from Peter Driscoll, of all people, right? And so now I'm out, right? I can't hold a stick. I was broken 3 places. So we make the playoffs. We're playing Montreal, the best team in the thing. And in comes another young kid, Andy Moog, and he plays great. And we knock out Montreal 3 games straight. Go to the Islanders, who ended up 2nd overall, and they ended up winning that year the Cup. But we gave them a good battle in 6. And then that leads us to when I got to New York, because in the 81, I always look at it, if I would have won one more game in the 80-81 season, we wouldn't have picked 15. We would have picked 14, and then Grant Fuhr would have been gone. Okay.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So in the summer of 81, Grant Fuhr is picked.
Right.
We go to camp, and the kid is awesome. He's awesome. But thinking he's going to go back to Victoria, he's just a young kid, right? So him and I roomed together during training camp on the road and all. Just got to a point, they kept him. He played the first game, played very well, all the way up to 9. And remember, you could keep him at 10, and then he has to stay. So after the 9th game, Glenn Sather called me into the office. He said, we're going to keep Grant, Eddie, and I know you don't want to be here as a 3rd goaltender. I'm going to have to put you on waivers and see if anybody picks you up. So I was a little devastated then, because that son of a gun, 18 years old, could play. But if I had to lose my job, it was to him. So
right. And at this point, too, you and Wayne have got to be pretty close as well.
Yeah, we were pretty close. And again, when he was in Indianapolis that summer, Stapleton called me up, and he obviously had Gretz on another call. Peter Driscoll. We had a house in Carmel, Indiana, which was 2 blocks away from Wayne, and he was being billeted with a doctor family. So they asked us, and again, see how things work out? Yeah. They asked us, me and Peter, to keep an eye on him.
Oh, okay.
And it turns out all 3 of us, so we used to go by Friday nights. He was going to high school at the time, and their famous place to meet at was Steak and Shake. So Driscoll and I, Peter had this nice baby blue Barrett's brand new convertible with white interior. Did we stand out or what in 78? And we would just drive through, and Gretz would be holding cart with his high school buddies. And Gretz, well, back then we called him Brinks.
What'd you call
Brinks
him?
Truck. Brinks.
What?
You remember the Brinks truck?
Yeah.
Because he was making 4 times the money we were making, so we called him Brinks, right?
That's good.
And hey, Brinks, you need anything? Boom, boom, boom. And then we ended up letting him stay at the house and have his parties, his high school parties. So again, like I said at the beginning, it's funny how things work out and how life takes you on a pattern and a path that leads you to your future.
So you get picked up by the Rangers then?
Yeah, well, they decided to let me go because Ron Lowe was coming back and he was making more money and figured they can't send him to the minors if nobody picks him up because they're paying him. And I was making, this time I renegotiated, I was making $80,000 and one way. And they were hoping I'd get picked up. Well, you know how it is early in the season, everybody thinks they're going to win the Stanley Cup, so they don't want to make any moves right after the training camp. So I ended up down in Wichita for about a month. Okay. And then the deal with, I almost went to Boston, but then Glenn Sather, as you know, doesn't like to be beaten in any trades.
Yeah.
And he wanted Stan Jonathan and 2 other guys for me, right?
Really? Okay.
So, yeah. Well, there was no way Boston was doing that, okay?
Yeah.
So I ended up staying a little longer than I thought. And actually, I think this is true. Someone told me that it was finally Wayne that went to Glenn and said, listen, he's not a minor league goalie. Look what he's done for us. Glenn, please get him traded. Right at that time, you guys had lost 2 or 3 goalies, right?
Sure.
It just worked out when Wayne told Slats, just make the deal, okay? Right. And remember, I just went with Lance Netherly. And so it was Slats finally relinquished, and I went to New York. And again, best move for me.
Yeah.
I loved New York. I loved it, you know.
Right.
In fact,
you were not only were you good there, but you were popular too. The fans loved you in New York.
I liked the fans. We got along. I mean, you know, they can love you or they can hate you.
Yeah. Well, I know
you got to stay on their good.
Yes. Well, you've got
to stay on their good side.
You got to be a battler.
Well, remember
competitor.
Yeah. Well, remember Dukes had that great year with Pav, right?
Yep.
He scored 40, 45. Yeah. And the next year he comes in thinking, well, remember that green magma stuff he was drinking before and wasn't eating meat anymore. And his goal production went down to about 20, right?
Yeah, Herbie kind of lost interest in it too. Herbie was not too happy.
That's exactly what happened that summer. Yeah. So, but anyways, I remember Gretz calling me up after we went 5-0 with me in the net, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And every time they'd be on the road and they'd be having breakfast, the Oilers, Wayne got the paper and he says, "Oh, Eddie won last night." All the way up to 5, right? He says, "Oh, Eddie got another one. He's 5-0." And he's saying it loud enough so that Slats could hear it, right?
Oh, really?
Slats
really?
Over and he says, yeah. He goes over to Gretz. He says, "That's the last time I do you a favor."
Oh, that's right, too. I never thought of that. That's true.
Yeah, that's but funny. They didn't care. They were in first place, and Grant Fuhrer was playing like a man possessed, right? So.
Right. So that's the 81-82 season. Is your first season in New York, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And what do we do in the playoffs? We played the Islanders in the playoffs too, then, right? Again.
Well, but remember we beat. Yeah, but remember we beat Philly first.
Yep. And
we lost the first game at home. And remember, I think it was McCammon called us the Smurfs, or that's right, maybe it was. Remember?
It was McCammon. Yeah.
McCammon, right? And Brooksy, Herb just took that. Remember all our little meetings? Okay, you Smurfs, just remember, he just drilled it into us, right? It was almost like David going against Goliath. And
totally.
Yeah. So, and then we took the Islanders.
How'd you get along with Herbie?
You know what? It wasn't until, and people ask me that, like, how was Herb as a coach? I thought he was great, you know? Yeah. It was hard to understand. The way I got along better when we were working at IMG and he was scouting. So he'd come into Windsor, we'd be watching the Spits, and now Herbie and I would be sitting in the corner and just talking hockey, and I loved just listening to him. Okay, so I think if you got Herb, and you know this, you got along good with Herb. Yeah. If you got him away from the rink and he wasn't your coach, he really was down to earth. I thought. Yeah. But
I agree
playing for him. He was hard to read, whether he liked you or, you know, because he was his own little guy. I remember they let us go home for Christmas, and we had a game in Pittsburgh. I don't know if it was the 82 season or 82, 83. So I fly back from Detroit, and we're told to meet the bus down here. This is when everybody's getting in, so make your flights. And I remember walking one way, and I saw Herb coming the other way, and I was just about to go over and say, "Hey, how was your Christmas night?" And he put his head down and kept walking, right? So then I said, "All right, just keep walking," right? Yeah. So that's the kind of mixed signals that I got from Herb. So,
he was definitely like, I was one of his boys. He liked me, but some of the things he would say to me sometimes was just, it made it seem like he hated me. You know, I don't know why. The rationale, and I was the same way. I saw him after when he was doing some TV work, and I said, Herb, how do you like the TV? He said, oh, you know me, Tom. When they ask me what time it is, I just tell them how to build a watch. Right? Like he was actually pretty funny. Like he's self-aware or knew who he was, and he's just a guy. Like I said, I was one of his boys, so everything was fine. So yeah. So how many years did you end up?
I know. I remember us talking. I remember us talking about you were the teacher's pet, Tom.
Oh yeah, no question. I was. Well, is either me or Nikki. Nikki was in that category too. Right?
Oh yeah. I forgot about Nikki. I think you were second.
Yeah, I was second. And I was mad. I was mad about being second too. I wanted.
Eddie, how'd you get along with Tom? Was he a pain in the ass to play with?
Well, we were a little bit
he was
different.
Great.
But we were like on a personal basis. Eddie was like the city guy, and I was up in Westchester, and Eddie's hanging out with Cheryl Teagues and all these kind of women. Yeah,
that wasn't until the second year.
Was that the second year? Okay.
Remember the first year? First year I lived out by you guys. I even went. We had dinner in Stanford one time. You and Weeks were living in Stanford, right?
That's right.
So I was living with Eddie Johnstone in Greenwich. Remember?
Right.
It wasn't until that summer. I wanted to be, but you're right. Tom is right. I wanted to be that city guy. I wanted to live downtown. Dukes and Barry Beck were there, and that's about Gresh. Yeah. So that summer, Gresh decides he's going to move in with Carol Alt.
Oh, that's
so
right.
His apartment became available.
Oh,
and I said, you know how tough it was to find an apartment back there, or else I probably would have never lived in the city. But I found it. But I remember Herb in training camp. He says, I hear you're moving into the city. I said, yeah, I'm renting Gresh's place, this and that, subletting Gresh's. He says, Eddie, that city can eat you up and spit you out at the same time. I said, well, Herb, if it does, you tell me, and I'll move back to Connecticut.
There you go. What do you? That'd be funny to hear that. That's good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's someone.
But that was the way people viewed the city. That's the way people viewed the city back then, right? If you're going to live in the city, you're going to be partying all the time and get in trouble.
Yeah. Why are we skipping over partying in the city? We should talk about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eddie, just tell a story. Tell about your typical night there, hanging out with Cheryl Teagues.
Oh, it all started Monday nights. Remember Vagabondo?
Yeah.
And so we invited all the guys, and even some guys came in from the outskirts, right, from Westchester.
Yeah.
And we'd have whatever Ranger showed up, it was our day off. We'd play Sunday. Monday was day off, and we didn't play till Wednesday, right? And they had the indoor bocce court, right? So we'd always have that. But so it started out kind of Monday, but I think I got the wrong impression because I hung with Barry Beck and Gresh. I didn't go out as much as they did. If it was the night before the game, trust me, I made my own spaghetti in that little apartment, and I stayed in and I did my little ritual. But I let loose after the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back then it was the studio. Studio was starting to die out a little bit, but it was still pretty good. But they had the parrot, the red parrot, I think. They had a lot of Visage. Sure. So Tom Smith, not Tom number one. Yes, the partying was great. The women were awesome. Cheryl Teagues, as Tom says, Carol Out, Kim,
Julie Wolf. Julie Wolf.
And Julie Wolf, you sucker.
Julie Wolf.
Yeah, you sucker.
Eddie and I had a lot of the same taste. We had a lot of the same taste.
Yes, we did. But Kim, Dukes' second ex-wife, Kim
Alexis,
right? Yeah. So we were all in that crowd, and we were being invited to.
Did you meet Dukes' first wife? Did you meet Dukes' first wife?
Oh, Robin, yeah.
Oh my God, she's a gorgeous woman.
Gorgeous.
Oh,
yeah.
Scary.
Were you part of the 6 that we snuck? I found out he was having a blind date, right, in California. Oh. Remember we left for that long trip? When we stayed outside the city, where Anaheim guys stay, the ritzy part down starts with an N. Yeah. Anyways, I found out where they were going because remember Crony's owner, Crazy Billy, right?
Billy, yes.
Yeah. So they were going to this restaurant. So I told Bubba about it. And I don't know if we had 6 of us. We went there early, right? We got a table right by the door where he was going to come in. Oh, and I think Dave Maloney was with us for sure. Right. And maybe Donnie. But there were 6 of us. And we had this table. And we wait. And all of a sudden he comes in. Crazy Billy was with them, then the record producer, a woman that's kind of set them up, and then this most stunning woman next to Dukes, and she was gorgeous. Robin,
is this Robin?
Oh yeah.
Oh. Well, he got traded out down. Yeah, He got traded out to LA when I was out there as well as she was there. It was like, God. Yeah.
Was he still married to her at that time?
He was still married.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
He was a doll. And then I didn't know until somebody told me. Remember the old Lowenbrow poster with the Corvette and the blonde on the hood?
Yeah.
It was Robin.
Oh,
it was Robin. Oh. Yeah.
You guys were living it up in the city.
Oh, we had a blast. Our team, we was really close. I had this discussion with somebody the other day, and they can't really relate to it because they didn't live through it. And they were kind of comparing it to today and today's athlete and everything. We partied all the time, but it was partying to be together too. Like most of the times we were together, like Eddie said, there'd be 6 guys here or 20 guys go out after a game. It really probably always wasn't good for our bodies to be having the cocktails we were, but as far as having that team, man, we were tight. Like the guys were all together. The thing was, if we were going to go together the night before and have a few cocktails, it was understood that when you go to practice the next day or game the next day, we all knew what we did together and we were all going to play our rear end. So I don't think our play ever suffered because of it. I think we just, that was the culture of the league too.
Well, we had a term. You got to play guilty.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. We had a term and you got to play guilty because I think, and Tom can vouch for this. The coaches knew we were out. Now, a lot of guys didn't miss curfew. That's a fallacy. You missed it only if you had, something to miss it for. But we would go hard until that 11 o'clock curfew. We would go hard the night before. And the coaches knew that. Yeah. And that's why you had to give an effort in that game, okay, or practice. Yeah. But if you didn't, then they knew you're not pulling your weight, so we're going to keep a good eye on you. And if you continue to do that, you're gone. And
it was kind of like the badge of honor too, right? Like some. I don't think I'm speaking out of school. Your good friend Wayne, he loved to have his cocktails, but when it came practice time or game time, he worked his rear end off, like, just as hard as anybody did. Yeah.
Well, remember when you just said we would always go in groups, right?
Yeah.
Well, in Edmonton, even the WHA year, Paul Schmier was our captain. He was a former NHL guy coming on, and we had this rule on the road, okay, that once we checked into the hotel or whether we went to the rink for practice, got back to the hotel, we always had a restaurant or a bar.
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody had to show up. Everybody. Whether you drank or not, like Dave Langevin and Dryden had to show up. All you had to do was have one cocktail or a Coke.
Sure.
Nobody forced you to drink, glass of wine, whatever you wanted. And then you could go because guys had families, wherever you went. But everybody had to show up. Yeah. And I remember Gretz, after I got traded, when they won the first cup in 83, I think it was, 83, 84, or 84, 85, whatever it was, that they continued that little tradition. You can call it tradition, but that kind of camaraderie that you're talking about, Tom, building, and that's what builds championship teams.
It really does. Yeah, get close like that. Yeah. So how many years did you have in New York?
Just the 2.
Just the 2. Okay. And then you got traded to Detroit?
Yeah, because bad boy Dukes, Herb wanted him out, right?
Yeah.
And Detroit wanted a goalie, right?
Okay.
And I think we had just got Hanlon that year. We still had Weeksy. Van Briesbrock, who was called up emergency, he came up. I think Baker was still around, right?
That's right, yeah.
A guy named Ron Scott. So Herb told Craig Patrick, let's do it. I need to get those 3 guys that they're talking about from Detroit. And he wanted Dukes out. That was
so what was the deal then? You and Dukes for who? Was that the Mark Osborne trade?
And Eddie Johnston.
Johnson. That's right.
The 3 of us for Mike Blaisdell, Willie Huber, and Mark Osborne.
That's right too. Wow.
Yeah.
Big Willie. Big Willie was a good man. Big Willie too. Well, he was good.
Yeah, we did, huh? It's funny about the trade too, was that year I was having a pretty good year and I was my last year of the contract, right? So Craig Patrick was trying to get me signed. And I remember him having lunch with me in St. Louis the day before we had just got in there. And he says, Eddie, are we going to finish this contract? Because I was doing it on my own, right?
Okay.
And I says, Craig, I ain't going anywhere. I know I'm unrestricted at the end of the year. I'm not going anywhere. Let's get the playoffs over with, and then we'll talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. So the playoffs are finished. We get knocked out of the Islanders. And remember the Molson slow pitch that they used to have?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, where all the teams came in, put a ball team together.
Yeah.
Well, Gretz and I were in Toronto, and we're having dinner the night before, and he says, okay, listen, if you're going out tonight, I'm not, because I got a commercial to shoot early, and then we'll meet up and we'll go to Niagara, right? So I said, okay. So he goes home, I go out, and I end up at somewhere else's place. So I'm strolling in the morning, right, into the hotel. I'm on the same floor as Gretz. And as I'm walking to my room to get some sleep, Gretz and Mike Barnett are going to do their commercial. Right. And he says, Eddie, okay, here's the deal. Boom, boom, boom. Meet us here. We're going, okay? Take a cab to where. So I said, okay. And then he says, oh, by the way, Craig Patrick's looking for you.
Oh boy.
He says, yeah, he called my mother. I says, he called your mother? He says, yeah, Phyllis. And she just called me and said he needs to talk to Eddie. I go, okay. So I'm thinking, let's get this contract down, because now that June's rolling around and I'm going to become an unrestricted. So I pick up the phone and I'm hungover and I haven't got any sleep. And I just said, and I was jokingly, I said, hey, Craig, it's Eddie. I hear you're trying to get a hold of me. What's up? Did I get traded? I was joking, right? Did I get traded? Right. And there's a little silence on the other side.
Oh, that's a terrible feeling.
Eddie, yeah, by the way, you did. Oh. I said, you got to be kidding me. No way. I didn't even ask where I was going. I said, Craig, I'm going to talk to you a little later. And I hung up the phone on him. And then I called back in an hour when I was a little bit,
I settled down.
Yeah. Well, here I am going to play for the Rangers in slow pitch. Now who am I going to play for, right? So as a result, it was I found out it was me, Dukes, and Eddie.
So how do you feel? Obviously, you're not happy because you love New York. You love playing for the Rangers. Yeah. But how'd you feel about the Red Wings in Detroit? Now you're basically going back home too, right?
Well, and remember that saying, the closer you get to home, your career is almost over.
I never thought of that. You know what? I've never heard that saying. Wow. Yeah.
They're getting you close to home, right? So we didn't like it. Okay, I remember talking to Dukes. Actually, Dukes was in Niagara, and so was Eddie. So we all got together. We started talking. Dukes left right away. He went back to New York. I flew back to New York right after to get all my stuff. But we didn't like it because the way I looked at it, here we were with the Rangers. The last 2 years, we took the Islanders to 6 games in the division final. Yeah. Just one more line, I think, for us. If we had a better fourth line, no offense to our fourth line, but they had a tremendous fourth line. Yeah. I think we could have taken them, and I think that's what we were building for, to go for the Stanley Cup. Yeah. Well, we're going to a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 17 years. So we're going from a team that wants to win the Cup to a team that just wants to make the playoffs. So I was a little, I was a little devastated. But then again, Stevie Yzerman came in that year, Jerry Gallant, Lane Lambert, and we turned it around and we made the playoffs. So,
okay. Right. It's interesting to talk with the Rangers. And listen, I think both the same way. Love playing for the Rangers. Is fantastic. I just wish we could have kept some of the teams together more. Like you look at the Islanders when they were successful, right? They changed parts here and there, but basically the core of the team stays together. We were constantly changing players. It was always new coaches, new general managers, and new philosophies about how to do things. I look back and go, oh man, if we had kept us together. We had Clark Gillies on one of our shows, and he was great. And he told us that if the stories, Tom laughs at me because I'm telling stories all the time over and over.
Gillies said that if you guys would have beat the Islanders, you would have won the Cup, which is probably true. I think that was conventional wisdom at the time.
Yeah, I didn't feel that way at the time. Yeah,
I did.
I'd look back at it.
I believed it. Yeah, I thought, like I said, if we just added a couple more people. Now you got to remember those 2 years. 2 of our better players were always hurt, Alfie and Anders. Yeah. Right? Sure. Like if we had them at full strength, then there comes our third line, which was our second line. Second line becomes third, and our second line was pretty good with Rogers, and So I do believe that statement from Clark. Yeah. When I was doing Clark's tournament, we'd always talk about that. That summer tournament he had in Long Island. God bless his soul. One of the best tournaments I've ever been. It was a 3-day thing. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was the best format I've ever been around. Cool. You played with a group the first day. Second day, you played with a different group. And then the third day, nobody was allowed except the celebrities. And we'd have like a Ryder Cup. Okay.
Oh,
and
cool.
Winners got 2,500, losers got 700.
Wow.
So
Cool.
it made it, that was the third day. So when LaRouche and Mario, Dukes, I didn't know Dukes was that good of a golfer. Boy, did he take it serious. He won it one year for us on the last hole, right? So
cool. Nice.
Anyways, we had cocktails about that, Clarkie and I, right?
Yeah,
and I honestly believe we could have been there had they, like what you're saying, kept the team together a little bit more and add a few pieces here and there. Alfie and Anders become healthy. Things could have changed.
Yeah, totally. So how did it go in Detroit when you got there for you personally?
First year I got a real bad injury. And personally, I love this. Obviously I'm from Windsor, but I knew Detroit. And as you say, Detroit and the suburbs, we got a bad name because, the city, but the suburbs, as you know, are great,
Love it.
But I got hurt and I tore my hamstring in 3 places. And instead of getting the surgery, I just let it, heal. So I was out for about 4 months. And I probably should have stayed out the whole season because it really wasn't. And then when I came back, I kind of struggled. I ended up playing Steph got hurt or something in the first round against St. Louis. I ended up playing the series. We almost beat them. We took them to, again, 3 out of 5. But the next 2 years, it was me and Devellano just didn't get along. When that chemistry goes out and he's upset at me and I'm definitely upset at him, things didn't go well. So Detroit was not a good experience other than the fact I got to meet a lot of good people. I ended up staying here. The economy was good for a retired player. Life after hockey wasn't that bad being a Detroit Red Wing. And now I do as many. In fact, we got a game tomorrow. We do about 25 alumni games a year.
Yeah, and you're actively involved in alumni. Are you running the alumni? You were, weren't you?
No, Joey Kosher is now. I was, but Joey is. What we tried to do is it's unlike you guys have in New York, where it's tight between the major team and the alumni.
Yep.
We're not. We're a little separated.
Yeah, you're kind of on your own, right? You run your own.
Yeah, exactly. So we felt making Joey president. Right? Not that he does a lot. Our secretary, George Bowman, does it all. But bringing Joey in, who had 4 Stanley Cups, being that buffer, especially with Stevie coming in now, being an alumni guy. So things are starting to get a little better, but we could use a little bit more support like Papa Rangers give the grandfather Rangers.
They're
phenomenal. They're
really
phenomenal.
Good. So then you retired as a Red Wing. How did that go? It's just like, okay, this is it. It was bitter. How were you feeling?
It was bitter. Yeah. Okay. When you got the Free Press writer, the hockey writer, and his name escapes me now, but you would know him, Vartan.
Yeah.
That's it. Zapulyan, right?
Yeah.
Calling you up in the morning and saying, Eddie, how do you feel about being released? I go, what? He says, yeah, you've been released. You, Danny Gare, and Bobby Mano, I think. The 3 of us, we were released. And I go, well, I guess I'm not too happy about it, but thanks for telling me. Wow. I didn't even get a phone call from the Red Wings. Didn't even get a phone call, And everybody was a little bitter because we had the worst year the year before, okay? We had Harry Neal come in to coach. They fired Nick Polano. We had made the playoffs 2 years in a row. And I think the worst thing and I tell Jimmy Devellano the same thing. As you were saying, you got to build the chemistry, keep the team together a little bit more, right? Yeah. Well, that year, after having 2 successful seasons, they brought in Ray Staszak, Adam Oates, and Chris Shahaki from Michigan Tech, Ray Staszak, and Oatesy. Oatesy was a pretty good player, but Staszak and Shahaki, they were paid. Now, again, we didn't know salaries back then, but all of a sudden the papers somehow to get used to it.
Sure.
In the papers, they put their salaries, and it was more than Stevie, Johnny O, who had just scored 50, Yeah. Oh, yeah. And probably more than, I don't know what Dukes was making, but that was our top line.
Wow.
They shut down. First 10 games of the season, boom. Then Stevie gets hurt. We get a lot of injuries. We fired Harry Neal. Brad Park comes in. God awful. 40 points. Okay.
Oh.
I've never been beaten in double digits as many times as we did. 12-2,
Wow.
14-4. I mean,
I
it was
forgot about those
god
teams,
awful.
Yeah.
It was god awful. I think you remember December. We were in Madison Square Gardens. And remember, we never came out. I think you were still with the Rangers.
That's right. Yes, we had the big team meeting. Yes, we had a big team meeting. Yeah.
It wasn't a team meeting. It was Harry Neal must have known something was up. He went around to each individual guy and just yelled at each one of us. Boom, boom.
Oh, is that right?
Finally, got a knock on the door and said, "Hey guys, you're going to forfeit the game. You got 3 minutes left in warm-ups, right?"
Wow.
And I'm playing the damn game that night. I want to have a good game, right?
Yeah.
You guys beat us, I think 6 or 7-1 or something like that.
I didn't know that's what happened. I thought you had a big team meeting.
That's what happened. No. Well, it was his meeting. He wanted to tell us what he thought of us before he was being canned. You know,
that was inspiring. That was inspiring, wasn't it?
And to this day, Harry and I, we still laugh about it. You know.
Yeah.
But Harry back then, he was a comedian more than he wasn't a bad coach, but he was more of a guy to come in and relax guys, and hopefully he got a good team and he can coach them. And things just went downhill right from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you retired. What did you do for work when you first retired?
I took some time off. I had a little savings in the bank. Took some time off. It never went around Joe Louis. Didn't want to go. It was just, how you're trying to figure out what you want to do in life, and you're not too happy because you thought you'd be playing and you weren't prepared for this, right? I thought I had a couple more years. I was 34 at the time. Right. But finally, Alex Delvecchio, Johnny Wilson, and Ted Lindsay and Sid Abel called me up and said, "Hey, can we have dinner?" So we went to that Roma Cafe, which I think a lot of the visiting players used to go to.
Sure.
And we had dinner, and they just told me, and Gary Bergman was involved too. And they said, "Hey, Eddie, listen, we know you're not coming around the rink. We're trying to get a hold of you. We've got this alumni association that really is in there to help guys transition, okay? And all our guys, they were all working. They were working for the automotives, okay? Mm. Each guy was representing companies. He says, we can help you get started. So that's what happened. I started playing with the alumni, started meeting people. They introduced me to some companies, and I started repping for them for 2 years. Sure. And then started my own little repping agency with a very successful tool maker, an engineer, that knew the business inside out. He left his company. We started a small little repping company where we had 6-7 companies in the fold. And that's what, until Mike Barnett came in 1992 and rescued me. Yeah. So
that's right. IMG.
So that's
Eddie.
IMG.
Eddie Mio, Tom Laidlaw, Klaus Elefak, Mike Barnett. Who else did we have working for us? Is that it?
Yuri Sira.
Yuri Sira, that's right, Yuri. So people that don't know, Eddie and I, so I'd started my own agent business, Laidlaw Sports Management, and I would see Mike Barnett. So Mike is Wayne Gretzky's agent, very successful, probably the most successful agent at the time. So I knew him from LA. And then when I started my agent business, I'd be out west all the time recruiting, and I'd run into Mike. And then they had 2 guys that had moved on to different jobs. So Eddie and I jumped into the same spot. Eddie and I got back together again, teammates.
Back together, side by each, as the French Canadians used to say.
We were sharing girlfriends and sharing jobs.
There you go.
Whoa. Back up.
No, Smitty.
We didn't share. It wasn't
share.
The same. Yeah. It was. We took.
Tom took over. Tom took over after I got traded from Detroit. But she was a doll. You got to admit.
She was. I actually did. I didn't know until after. I really did not know until after the fact that you had dated her. I really didn't know that. So blame it on Gresh. It was Gresh's fault.
Right? You know whose fault it is?
Whose?
His ex-wife.
Oh, Carol, it's her fault. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I found out she was bad-mouthing me to Julie.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah. But anyways, that's for another show. That's all. That's when we're X-rated.
That's right. Yeah.
that podcast comes out next year. But Eddie, can we just talk about the Canadian wedding of the century, because you're front row for that?
Yeah. That was a shock.
Crazy.
Oh, it was like, I mean, we've seen the royal weddings in England. This would top it. And
you're the best man. You're the best man there too, right?
Which I still can't figure it out. But you know, I think you got Kevin Lowe, who was close to Wayne. You had Paul Coffey, Mess. You know, these are guys he was in the trenches with. But I think it was more, when I really look back, Gretz and I had a really good bond, meaning as an older brother, you know, which he's the oldest of the family. And I think the stuff I know he mentioned on a broadcast, TNT, and I was shocked, but I was very proud of it. He said there was other than his dad, there was two guys that really influenced his life. And this is well after the wedding, right? Mm-hmm. And he says, one is obviously Eddie Meal, that I met him at 17 and he talked to him. And the other was Ace Bailey. And Ace kind of took him under more of the wing because, you know, now Kathy came in and we all got along. I was doing my own little thing in Edmonton. So I had him the first, 3-4 years. But Wayne and I always stayed in touch. And when he came to New York, we'd go out. He came to Detroit, we'd go out, little things like that. And then after I retired. So it makes sense to me now. But at the time, when he called me, and he says, Eddie, I got to ask you a question. Would you be my best man? I go, and I was shocked. And I said, absolutely. Are you kidding me? That's an honor. So I now realize, and what we've been through, why I was chosen as best man. Sure. You got to remember, he had two buddies. He had a real good friend, John Mowat, who he grew up with. And we were all in the wedding party, but it was still an honor. So we all got there I got there 2 weeks before the wedding, and the whole team came back. Remember, they just won the cup. They had just won the cup, Stanley Cup in 88. Right. So we had the cup with us. Our stag party was pretty good. Okay. We went bar to bar with the cup in a bus. And the wedding.
Hold on. You were going bar to bar with the bus and the Stanley Cup. So you got all the Edmonton Oilers who just won the Stanley Cup in Edmonton. All guys going out and having fun with the Stanley Cup. So it must have been a scene when the people are sitting in the bar or the restaurant and you guys show up, right? I mean, that's like, what is going on? They just looked out, but they all knew Gretz was getting married, right? So they figured this was the pub crawl. This was his stag party, right? Oh, God, and we kept it clean. Oh, did you? But we kept it clean because, the press is going to get it. That's true.
It was just bar, restaurant, guys we knew, guys we visited. We kept it clean, or else, we would have been in those spots. So now, if we were somewhere else.
Had the trade happened? Had the trade happened yet? The trade had not. Wayne had not got traded yet.
No,
weeks later.
No. But that's the funny part was, I'm there for a whole 2 weeks, and then the last week, I don't know when it was happening, but we get in the limo, just me and him, to go to the church. All the other guys have already been gone in their cars, right? Right. We get in the car, and he looks at me and he goes, I'm getting traded. And I said, Gretz, can we get married first before you lay that on? I thought he was kidding, right? Before you laid that on me. It just won the cup, not even 3 weeks before, right? And he told me the story. And he said, so
people know. Oh, sorry, Eddie, but just so people know, like when that happened, like for him to say that to you, I probably would have been the same way, because even when he got traded, I was like, no way. Wayne Gretzky is never going to get traded. And to this day, whenever something happens and we think it can't happen, we'll say, well, Wayne Gretzky got traded. So that's how big that statement would have been, right? Like if I was sitting in that car, I was like, no, you're not believing that. Yeah.
I thought
this is on the way to.
I thought you guys
this is on the way to his wedding. No, that was already up and at him. That was taken care of. But,
let's go back. Did you ever get the money back for paying for the flight? Did you get that?
Oh, I never had to, because it never went through. It was the old days, remember? And when he gave his American Express, he gave the American Express and went through on that. And I think the total flight ended up around 10,000, something like that, because we landed in the wrong airport. Okay, I forgot to mention that. We went to the international airport, right?
Oh, wow.
So here's this small little Learjet, and we're looking around, and the lights are out because now it's around 11 o'clock, right? We left at 2. It's around 11 o'clock, which I think 9 o'clock. Yeah, 2 hour difference, but it's dark. No, there's no planes. We're going, what the hell is going on? And then a custom guy comes on the plane. He says, he looks, he sees 3 guys. He says, guys, you're at the wrong airport. They're waiting for you at the city airport, right?
That's funny.
So,
that's good stuff.
So when we got to the city airport, that's when John Short took over and said, here. So it cost us another $2,000 to leave international up, not even up and down, like not even more than 10 minutes. It was $2,000. Another $2,000.
Good story. Yeah.
So Eddie, so he tells you he's getting traded. Sorry to jump back. Does he know he's going to LA at that point, or is he still up in the air?
No, it's all up in the air because what they had found out, him and Barnett, somehow somebody leaked it. They were going to do it without his knowledge. It was Vancouver. They were going to trade him to Vancouver. Okay. Oh. And when Wayne found out, him and Barney went into the offices, Pocklington and Sather, and said, I'm not going to Vancouver. If you're going to trade me, I'm going to let you know where I'm going.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. They said New York, Detroit, or LA. I think it came down to those 3, right?
Yeah. Those 3 teams. And I remember, right after the wedding, obviously the Sunday we all met. They left Sunday night, but they didn't go on a honeymoon. They went right back to LA because of all this stuff happening, right? And I think it was 4 days later, I think he was traded. I'm not sure what the date was, but I remember him calling. He says, Eddie, I would have loved to come to Detroit. And but he felt, and the organization felt, hey, we got our guy, Stevie Eisenman, this and that. It'd be tough. New York, obviously, would have been, I thought, the spot he would go. But then Janet's life is in, and it wasn't Janet. Janet would have moved anywhere. I mean, think about it. She would have went to New York.
Sure.
Easy. Right? Yeah. She was just starting on. But they made her like the villain.
Yeah.
The Edmonton people. Oh, yeah, she comes in, she gets married and brings them to LA, right? Janet had a say in it, right?
Yeah, totally.
So LA ended up because he was able to take 2 of his good buddies, McSorley and Kruzelinski, right?
That's right.
And I think Jimmy Carson and Marty, somebody went the other way with
Marty Jelena. Yeah, Marty Jelena.
And he knew Tom Laidlaw was there too, so
Wayne wanted to play with me. That's what it was.
Absolutely. That's what he told me in the car going to get married. I'm probably going to pick up. I'm probably going to go to LA because Tommy's there.
Yeah, exactly. It's the funniest thing. When you first play with Wayne, all you want to do is get him the puck. Like you think, I'm supposed to get it to Wayne. I got to get Wayne the puck. And after a while, he came to me and goes, Tom, you don't always have to get me the puck. You pass to somebody else. He's a good man too, I'll tell you. I know you know this because we're so close to him, but what a fantastic teammate. Like he really has a way of understanding his impact on the game, on individuals, on kids, on the media, just like on the league itself. Just a special man too. Yeah.
Well, remember we went back to the camaraderie. Yeah. Well, he had this really nice place in Edmonton. It was the penthouse, but not way up. Like I think it was 8 floors, but he had the nice penthouse deal. Okay. That's where he'd bring all the guys for dinner.
Yeah.
They'd have a chef come in and they'd watch hockey. They'd watch a hockey game.
Cool.
Like you didn't get enough, and now all the guys. And I think if you ever saw the documentary they did, Boys on the Bus, it shows one of their dinners and how they were talking, some arguing.
I did see that. Yeah.
Remember the documentary? Yeah. Well, that was done on a regular basis. You know what else he did that a lot of people don't know? Any new kid that got called up or traded, especially if he was a young kid. If he's an older kid, it's all right. But young kids, rookies, he'd bring them to live with him, not stay in a hotel. Yeah.
So, Eddie, you worked for IMG. How many years did you have with IMG?
I had about 12.
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years.
Wow.
2002.
So you left IMG, right?
Yeah.
So you left IMG and then you got your own agent business going on now, right? That you had for a few years.
Now I do, but remember Gretz was given 20% of the Coyotes, right?
Oh, that's right.
I think in 01. And he was also director of hockey operations.
Right.
Okay. So he had always told me, he says, when the time's right, I'm plucking you out and you're coming to work. So that year, Barney left. Okay.
Yep.
Barney became the GM in 01. Right.
Yeah.
So I stayed with, Wayne said, do you want to come now? And I said, look, I got 4 kids that are going into the draft this summer. Give me another year. Okay. And then I'll let you know. He said, fine. Your job's waiting for you. Well, that year, I kind of fell out of love with IMG, with Peter Johnson, and Pat Brisson and JP Barry took over. And Pat's a good guy. I never got along with JP Barry. We would always have our arguments. And it got to one point where Peter Johnson asked to have lunch with me at the GM building. He was in town to do some work with GM. And I figured it was because I'm now the oldest standing guy that's working for IMG. I figured he wanted to ask me, how is the division going, right? Sure. How is Pat and JP managing the division? So we sat down, we had a cocktail, and he hits me with, JP and Pat Brisson don't want you to do contracts anymore. Oh. And I kind of looked at him and said, what are you talking about? He says, they feel you should just be on the road recruiting and let them handle the contract. And I said, go F yourself to the boss, right? Oh yeah. I says, they're going to take my first rounders and second rounders. I'm going to be left with the 4th and 5th rounders because I know they're not going to want to do it. And what credibility do I have going in and talking to a GM when I'm only doing the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounders, right?
Yeah.
I said, you can take this job. And so the song.
You did right there? Oh.
Yeah, but I stayed. I then called Gretz, and I stayed to the summer to make sure our kids got drafted. And one of those kids that year was Daniel Payet, who went 16th overall to Buffalo. Right. Ended up winning 2 cups in Boston, and I'm really proud of that kid because he was just a solid. Wasn't a top 6 guy. He was just solid, right? Yeah. And I called Gretz up. I said, is that job waiting for me? He says, yep. So in 2002, I started with the Phoenix Coyotes.
Oh, very good. How many years did you have there?
We went 5 years to 7. And Gretz had just bought not a winery, but into a wine company.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he asked me to run it in the States. So I did that for another 5 years. It seems like I got a 5-year plan, Tom. 5 years. 5 years.
That's cool.
And then after that, Wayne sold to a bigger company. They had their infrastructure. I was getting a little. So I just started working it here back in little odd jobs, meaning representing some kids, and until I decided to go myself, So, yeah.
Well, Eddie, you have had I
had 2 years. I had 2 years, I forgot, on ESPN Radio Detroit, where a friend bought the franchise to see how it would go here. Right. But we were good, but we had a very small radius and just wasn't, until this guy could buy an FM station or something. Right. And we had the ticket. Remember the ticket? And that was the 97.1. And they were pretty powerful, and they had a couple other stations. So I did that for 2 years. So,
yeah. Eddie, you have had a very colorful life, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but Tom, I should be retired right now, enjoying life like you are.
I'm not retired. No way, no retiring, Eddie. I don't ever want to retire. Don't retire.
Yeah, Tom's job is making videos with this.
No, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, I know. Keep working.
I really wouldn't.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Listen, brother, I had a great time playing with you. You're a fantastic team player. You really were. You're a great teammate. We had a lot of fun together. And again, I really appreciate you being on the show. And I really do mean it. I think if you look back at your life, you can say, wow, I did all that stuff. Like just listing all the stuff you just did now. So fantastic life, brother. Great to see you again.
But the thing is, Tommy, and I'll let you go with this. You do a great job. You did great. You're the same kind. Okay. Great teammate. We had fun together. But it's the people we met that made my life successful. Okay.
Totally.
When I look back at all the guys we met with Bubba, yourself, with Weeksy, our team in New York was great.
Yeah.
We still see each other. That's what makes my life full. And I can tell these stories. Yeah.
Yes.
So
you're good at it.
Appreciate you guys having me on, and best of luck to both Tom Squares. And you guys take it easy.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for doing this.
Great to see you, Eddie.
Good to see you, Tom.
Great show, everybody.
Oh man, what a great episode! What a colorful guy, man. I mean, he had shared some great stories. You guys had some great times working together twice. That was just awesome.
Yeah, he was a fantastic guy. I kind of forgot what a personality he was too. How he lives life all out all the time. Eddie does. And Eddie Meal was fantastic. He really was a great teammate. We weren't necessarily running in the same circles all the time. You know, he's in the city. I was more outside the city, but still a great teammate. Great to see him.
But he was one of those as a goalie. He was like a battler, and that's why I think the fans loved him, because he was just scrappy. You know,
that was it. Like, and I mean, it's a compliment to him. He was a good goaltender. He wasn't a great goaltender, but he just competed as a end off. So
that was an awesome interview too. What a great life. So glad we had him on.
All right, Grasshoppers. Thank you for listening. We had a fantastic show. We'll see you next time.